As millions of activists lead protests for climate change, Dr. Jane Goodall was in Washington, D.C., talking about her hope for the future and actions that we must take to make the world a better place.
I got the chance to sit down with Dr. Goodall before her speech at the anthem to discuss capitalism, youth activism, and a lot more. Dr. Goodall, thank you so much for taking some time with us. We really appreciate it. What drives you to continue educating and advocating for a better world?
Because I'm very passionate about the environment and animals. I'm also very, very concerned about the future of our children. You know, I've got grandchildren. The eldest two could produce great-grandchildren within the next few years. And if we can't find ways of changing the way we behave today, if we carry on with business as usual, what's the world going to be like for them when they grow up? I don't like thinking about that.
And what is business as usual?
Business as usual is continuing to extract the oil and gas and coal from underground. It's continuing to log forests. It's continuing to behave as though the finite natural resources of the world are infinite. And already in some places we've used them up so fast and so intensively that nature can't restore them.
We've just had Greta Thunberg and other young climate activists at the UN Climate Summit advocating for dramatic change to address some of the issues you're talking about. Is that something that gives you hope?
Well, the young people altogether give me hope. You know, I began our youth program Roots and Shoots back in '91, and we got about 100,000 or even 150,000 active groups around the world of all ages, and every group is choosing 3 projects to make the world better, one for people, one for animals, one for the environment. And they are changing the world through actual taking action. And so they're planting trees, they're removing trash, they're lobbying governments, they're raising money to help earthquake victims. And because there's the 3 projects, there's always children who care about people, those who care about animals, those who care about the environment. And so every child is passionate because they're doing something that they really care about.
Right, and they see how it'll impact their future specifically.
Yes.
I know you've spoken about the level of urgency, and of course other scientists have also sounded the alarm about the shortened timeline that we have to take dramatic action. Do you have confidence in our political system to be able to make those kinds of big changes in the relatively short period of time that we have?
Most of our political systems have swung to the far right, and it's all about money, and there's a lot of corruption out there. And no, I don't have confidence. So it's up to us. I mean, you know, the consumers are going to have to change big business. And so the consumers in a democracy, or the individuals in a democracy, have got to not only elect those politicians who do care, but support them when they come up with legislation which may make our lives a little more difficult. We may have to tighten our belt. And you know, people say, oh yes, I know it's better to buy organic food, it's better for the environment, but it costs a bit more, so I don't. But if food costs a little bit more, you value it more and you waste less. And food waste and other waste is one of the huge problems on the planet today.
I'm sure you've seen the big debate about plastic straws, which are of course a contributor, and people have been very concerned about having to give up their plastic straws, and they hate the paper straws, etc. I mean, how do you cut through that and make the case to people that these individual decisions matter and are important?
Yeah, well, plastic straws and single-use plastic bags are the 2 great horrors. There's lots of other uses of plastic as well because it finds its way into the ocean. But the thing is, there's now a lot of bamboo straws. There's straws made of metal, and there's cute little brushes that you can clean them with, so you can reuse them, or they disappear into the environment like a bamboo straw. If you throw it out, it doesn't harm the environment at all.
Do you believe that the kind of conservation, the kind of radical changes that we need to deal with climate change are fundamentally consistent with the type of capitalistic system that we have in America?
Not really, no. That's what I say we need really not to carry on with business as usual. And we need to start working for the future and not for the next shareholders meeting or the next political campaign. And how you get that through to the leaders, you've got to find a way to reach the heart. And I don't think aggression does it. It just makes them angry. And they're just thinking, well, we're not going to pay attention to this. We're just going to go on doing it, and to hell with them. So you have to find a way to reach into the heart. And very often, that's through their children. I've got examples of that where it wasn't actually a politician, although some politicians have changed, but the head of a lab, which was basically torturing chimps, didn't want to speak to me. He did let me in to have a look at the lab, which was a mistake, and so I began talking about it in my lectures. And his 16-year-old daughter came home one day. She'd been to my lecture, and she was crying. She said, "Dad, how could you do that?" And he said, "Oh, I hated you at that time. Look what you've done to my daughter." But 3 years later, he wrote and said, "Could you come and visit the lab now? Because you were right." And my daughter helped me to understand, and everything had changed.
Would you consider sitting down with President Trump if he was open to that idea?
Well, with what children? I can't think of a child of his that I could influence.
Another thing that you were the first to observe was chimpanzees engaging in this sort of long-term warfare, which people had no idea that this was something that happened really outside of human beings. What did you learn from the way that they engaged in conflict that's applicable to humans and our proclivity towards war?
Well, basically, although it's very different in our societies, it's all about competition for resources. The chimp war was because the larger community wanted to regain access to the area it had lost when a smaller group broke off. And so they annihilated them and took back those resources. And, a lot of our wars are about oil and gas and things like that, and access to certain parts of the ocean because it's a channel to bring wealth in from other countries. So what we can learn from the chimpanzee warfare is, I think, that probably 6 million years ago, there was an ape-like, human-like ancestor, common ancestor, and probably these aggressive tendencies were in that common ancestor. So we can just think that our aggression and our predilection to war is probably part of our makeup. But because of the explosive development of our intellect, we should be able to control that. We should be able to, and we could if we wished.
How do you think that the media has done in terms of covering environmental crises?
Well, there's one big mistake that the media has made, and that is, I know there's a lot of gloom and doom around the world, there's no question, but also there's an immense amount of amazing people doing wonderful things, projects that restore forest or clean rivers, and I think the media should give more attention to that, because if people just read doom and gloom, they totally lose hope. And if you totally lose hope, why bother to do anything? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And, if our children lose hope, we may as well give up.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And how do you view the role of political activism within your own work and what you're trying to do?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be non-violent, non-aggressive. Find ways of, as I repeat, reaching into the heart.
Dr. Goodall, thank you so much. So grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Next on Rising, the United Auto Workers strike against GM is already its longest strike against GM since 1970.
And those workers show no signs of giving up until their demands about wages, benefits, and the use of temporary hourly workers are met. American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten shares an update from the picket line. That is next.